Welcome. This lecture we're going to talk about photoreception and mechanoreception. Photoreception is the sensory response to light. As we saw with chemoreception, photoreception developed early evolutionarily. We've discussed how biorhythms are dependent upon light, and light can also be used in navigation. Therefore, the ability to detect light must be well established before animals could use light for so many processes. Almost all animals have the ability to detect light. Photoreception relies on a photopigment, and there are several, but rhodopsin is used by all animals. Some primitive animals have photoreceptors in their skin, while others have photoreceptors associated with eye spots or eyes. This organism here is a euglenia. This is a protist, and it's a primitive animal. It has a little flagella that helps it move. It has chloroplasts so that you can see that it can get nutrition through photosynthesis, but it can also eat. And this little red dot here is its eye spot. That's how it detects light so that it can photosynthesize. These eye spots are somewhat primitive and are generally just a small spot with a layer of cells. And these cells are light-sensitive cells that provide directional support to the organism. Eyes have evolved in several different ways, all involving photoreceptor cells conveying information to the nervous system. But in general, photoreception is much more complex than chemoreception that we've already talked about. Some eyes only sense light, while others can form images. Eyes of primitive flatworms are simple inverse eye containing a cup of pigment cells with an inner lining of sensory nerve cells. Other animals, such as the slug, have a more advanced vesicular eye with a cornea and lens that focus light on a layer of photoreceptor cells, like a retina, and pigment cells. And you can see those right here and also right here. These snails and slugs would have vesicular eyes. These vesicular eyes also have accessory retina that can detect infrared light. And this is kind of the evolution of the eye. You can see here the snail with that primitive vesicular eye, and then the scallops and the art clam. And next we'll talk about this, the fly, the compound eye. Roundworms, mollusks, and arthropods have complex compound eyes with photoreceptor units called ommatidia, and these are going to radiate out from a central base. And you can see that here is the compound eye on a dragonfly and on a crab, and it's going to have these individual units, these ommatidium, which each of those have a reticular cell that is going to support that. That's going to have a nucleus, a Golgi body, a rough endoplasmic reticulum to make proteins, and then some pigment. Each ommatidium acts as its own functional unit, having its own lens, sense cell, optic nerve, and pigment cell. And this system can widen the field of view with many ommatidia. As an example, the dragonfly has over 10,000 ommatidia. However, because each ommatidium is acting as its own eye, image construction must occur in the brain instead of the retina, as seen in vertebrates. Vertebrates and cephalopods are octopus and squid, have an eye that is highly specialized and structured with different types of cells. They have a lens to focus the light, an iris to regulate the amount of light, and many photoreceptors forming the retina. Cephalopods have a converse eye where the light reaches the photosensitive retina cells first, whereas vertebrates have an inverse eye where light passes through capillaries and nerve cells before reaching the photoreceptors. And here you can compare the cephalopod eye to the vertebrate eye. And here you can see the eyes on this octopus, this bird, and this human, my daughter. And again, the cephalopod eye is going to be slightly different than the vertebrate eye based on how images pass through the lens and reach the retina. Both will produce an image that's inverted on the retina. Photoreceptor cells are highly specialized cells with a folded membrane to increase the surface area and the amount of light absorbed. These folded membranes contain chromatoproteins or protein pigments, which trigger chemical reaction when a photon of light excites the protein pigment. There are two types of photoreceptor cells in vertebrates, rods and cones. Rods contain the protein rhodopsin, which we mentioned, and rhodopsin is very sensitive to light, and thus the rods are much better in low light conditions. The other photoreceptor cells are cones, and they have the protein idopsin. Cones are less sensitive to light, but more proficient at color detection and visual acuity. In general, nocturnal animals are going to have more rods, and diurnal animals are going to have cones. And this makes sense because nocturnal animals are active at night and need to have more sensitive eyes for the dark conditions. The rods and cones have different amino acids making up these proteins, but they're somewhat similar in structure. Both of these cell types have an outer portion that is made of photosensitive membrane and an inner portion containing cellular organelles and a synaptic terminal to communicate with the nervous system. And you can see that here the cones and the rods are communicating here. And again, a close-up of a rod with the photopigment, and then the inner part of their cell, the mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, nucleus, and then finally down here, that synaptic terminal that's going to communicate with the nervous system. The activation of photopigments is graded depending on the number of photons exciting these proteins. So in brighter light, there's going to be a stronger response than dimmer light. Visual processing starts at the retina and is transmitted via the optic nerve to the brain for interpretation. Vertebrate eyes are highly complex with many different stimuli such as shape, color, and distance, all being processed and interpreted simultaneously. Next, we'll talk about mechanoreception and touch. Specialized sensory cells that are stimulated by touch are called mechanoreceptors. As with the other sensory cells that we've talked about, mechanoreceptors are highly specialized with corresponding connections to the nervous system. And this connection is going to produce a response that's correlated with the signal. Insects are using the sensilla that we have talked about, these bristles, for mechanoreception. And you can actually see them on the legs of this dragonfly and all over the body of this honeybee. We also talked about these when we talked about other senses in insects. And these sensilla are going to function similar as we saw with chemoreception. Insects have a bristle shaft protruding from their exoskeleton, seen here. And at the base of that shaft down here is a mechanoreceptor neuron with the dendrite extended into this region. When the sensilla are moved, the membrane of the dendrite is altered, opening it and allowing ions to enter the neuron, stimulating a receptor potential. If the receptor potential is great enough, an action potential will be generated. Similar to the photopigments of the vertebrate eye, the signal in the mechanoreceptor neuron is graded depending on the amount of syncytium movement. A stronger stimulus from the dendrite movement is going to create a stronger action potential, which will be conveyed to the central nervous system. And these are called stretch receptors because depending on how much they stretch, that's how much sensory or mechanosensory you get. So again, this is a graded response based on how much this bristle shaft is moved. And if it's moved a lot, if there's a lot of force on that, you'll get more of a response from the central nervous system than if there's less movement. As with the other systems that we've discussed, mechanoreception in vertebrates is a bit more complex. Mechanoreceptor cells have dendrites in the skin epithelial cells and are specialized based on different types of touch. In general, these cells are called the dorsal root ganglion, and these are going to be closely associated with the spinal cord. There are several different types of cells as well as free nerve endings, and these are going to allow the brain to process temperature, pressure, and pain. These different types of mechanoreceptors are going to adapt to stimuli at different rates. Some are going to adapt slowly and have a prolonged response to touch, and these are called tonic receptors. And two of those are the Merkel discs and the Ruffini endings. And you can see the Ruffini ending here and the Merkel disc here. The Merkel discs and the Ruffini endings signal changes in touch or pressure. Other receptors are going to adapt more rapidly and provide more of a burst response to touch, and these are called phasic receptors. The two phasic receptors are the Meissner corpuscles, which will give a burst of action potential as the stimulus is applied, but it's going to cease during a maintained stimulus. So it's going to be kind of like a quick, but then it's going to go away pretty rapidly. The Pacinian corpuscles only give a single action potential at the onset or offset of a prolonged stimulus. So these are going to respond to a sudden puncture or a vibration. These dermal exteroceptors, remember the external receptors, these are different mechanoreceptors, are going to provide constant information about our external environment to the central nervous system. And the central nervous system will interpret these. The reasons you have some that are slow to adapt and some that are rapid to adapt is because normal everyday feelings you don't need to worry about in your brain. You don't need to acknowledge that. So the fact that I'm sitting on a chair, I don't need to respond to that. But if I get up and I have that loss of pressure, then I'll respond to that and I'll know I'm standing up. Others, you want to feel a little bit longer. And so the tonic receptors will be slower to adapt. When we first introduced this idea of sensory cells, we talked about the external and the internal. The internal interoceptive mechanoreceptors are called proprioceptors. And these are going to provide information about our internal organs and muscles to our central nervous system for interpretation. These receptors are going to monitor movement, position, mechanical stress, and tension in the body. As with photoreception, there are several areas in the brain that are going to process mechanoreceptive information, and this allows for plasticity in our response to stimuli and not a rigid all or none response.